Welcome to episode 13 of the White Whale Marketing Podcast. I'm Chris Nascimento. We're in collaboration with the Sport Marketeer. As always, I got some of my White Whale Marketing teammates here with me. We got Haral, we got AJ, and we got you guys on Instagram here today as well. So you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram at White Whale Marketing. You can see it over here on our YouTube. And yeah, so what we do for this podcast, we chat about three different topics that we write about within the Sport Marketeer newsletter. So the three topics we're going to chat about today is the first one being CPL expansion to this Vancouver area. The second one is in regards to the trends of women in esports, and the third one is about Facebook and the change with Meta, right? So yeah, we're going to see how that goes, and yeah, let's get started here. I think AJ, you got to start us here with the CPL expansion, right? So take it away.
Apparently we're having some feedback here. I don't know if everyone's volume is on. Might be mine.
Maybe put some headphones in. Maybe that will work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's okay. Anyways, I'll kind of maybe start it off, and then AJ can kind of take it away. Or AJ, you got it going?
Everyone hear me good? Yeah.
Yep, that's awesome.
All right, we're blessed.
AJ, you can tell he plays COD.
Nah. All right. Can everyone hear me good? You hear me good, boys?
Yes,
Yep,
sir.
Any feedback at all? Or am I good?
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, first of all, today, the CPL commissioner. Can you guys hear that too? Feedback? Having a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I have my headphones plugged in though, so
Here, you guys continue going. AJ, you start it, and then I'll see if it's me.
All right. Well, today the CPL commissioner, David Klanikin, if I'm pronouncing that right, announced that 6-5 Sports Entertainment LP. They were awarded the CPL Expansion Club in Vancouver, BC. So, as everyone probably doesn't know, the CPL was founded in 2017 and started its first season in 2019 with the 7 teams to start with: Cavalry FC, FC Edmonton, Forge FC, Halifax Wanderers, Pacific FC, Valor FC, and York United. The following year, they introduced Atletico Ottawa under Atletico Madrid management. And now, starting in the 2023 season, we're going to have a Vancouver team. So no one right now knows whether or not we're going to have a Vancouver FC or if it's going to be called something different, who's going to coach the team, what the logo is going to be. We don't know anything. But all we know as of now, it'll be the second expansion team in Canada and in the CPL. Furthermore, there's been additional rumors in the past few months whether they're going to add another team to Toronto, or if they're going to add a team in Fraser Valley, if they're going to add a team in Montreal or in Quebec City. So the expansion's going crazy right now in the CPL. I mean, they only started three years ago or 4 years ago now, like when they actually first started the league. So we've already seen 2 new teams in the league, right? So my main question for you guys is, will this actually be successful? Is this expansion actually going to be successful for the CPL, just throwing teams in right away and just throwing more and more teams in at once? Is it actually going to generate any buzz in Canadian soccer, despite having a lot of competition with like hockey and football and basketball in Canada?
Yeah, I'll chime in first here, and maybe you can kind of take it from there. I think it's interesting. I know, when I worked at Atletico, and I was involved. That's obviously a team within the CPL, and it was the latest expansion club. I think there were talks in regards to a club from, going to the Simon Fraser Valley, in BC. And I think now, AJ, now there's feedback with you. Yeah, okay, you got the AirPods in. Yeah, I think that would be a little too much, but I know the team that wanted to go to Simon Fraser Valley would probably be from the Bundesliga. I know I was talking to executives there. That was something that's kind of interested them as well, and they thought it was a great play to kind of get into the Canadian market. In regards to the actual location of where in Canada, I think it's interesting, right? Because it is the Canadian Premier League, yet they haven't really touched the French audience whatsoever, right? In Quebec, I think is the second biggest province within Canada, if I'm not mistaken, right? And obviously, there's Canada's full of different cultures, and Montreal's like a hotspot, obviously, with Montreal Impact or CF Montreal, whatever they're called now. And there have been something there, whether it's Quebec or Three Rivers or Shawinigan, whatever. I think that would probably be more interesting, or even I don't know. I think Saskatchewan was an option as well, but I think Vancouver is a little. Who knows? It may work, it may not, but I do think there is a lot of competition already there, and I think they're very involved in regards to the Whitecaps already. I think that's probably why the first club in BC went to Victoria, because obviously geographically it's a little more separated. But yeah, who knows? I'm sure it's great. The good thing it is about this is it allows for more Canadian talent to be brought into the CPL, right? And the more talent you have going, the more you can kind of get developed, the more games you get. I just finished recording with one of our guys, Nico, and he's basically saying how the biggest thing for goalkeepers is getting games. So hopefully, at the very least, this can help like Canadian goalkeepers, get some tune-ups, get some game experience under them, and who knows where it goes from there. But,
I think before all jumps in here, my biggest question was the Quebec side of it, right? The French have not to be like stereotypical or anything. Is there a feedback? Are you good? Not to be like stereotypical or anything, but the French are very passionate about soccer, and I'm surprised they didn't expand into Quebec first, rather than going and adding another team in BC. Like there's already the Whitecaps, there's already Pacific, and now they're adding, and there's Whitecaps Academy as well, which still plays at a really high level in Canada. My biggest concern is why didn't they expand, more eastern, east of Ottawa. There's only one CPL team, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 provinces between there. Like, although not massive, like Charlottetown could have had one because like UPI is a big soccer school. They could have had one in New Brunswick, like in Moncton or Fredericton. They could have had one in like in Quebec City or in Montreal or Three Rivers. Like the UQTR, they came second place. No, they won the national championship for Esports 2 years ago.
Who did?
So it would make a UQTR. Yeah, Three Rivers, like the university there. So it'd be very surprising, like they wouldn't go towards the very successful soccer areas in Canada, right? And I'm just surprised they went west compared to going out east, right?
Yeah. I'm not too sure because I think it's now or never when it comes to Canadian soccer, and I'm pretty sure the Quebec expansion is coming. Where I think the Vancouver expansion makes more sense than going to Quebec first is in preparation for the 2026 World Cup. And I know Montreal backed out of hosting the 2026 World Cup, and I know Vancouver is still kind of on the fence. I don't know if they've confirmed it or not. But with Montreal not deciding to completely invest in the World Cup and being a part of it as a host city, I think it makes more sense for the province or for the country to start expanding over into where the World Cup's going to be played, because that's where you're going to find the soccer hotbed and you're going to find the momentum starting first. So in my opinion, I think Vancouver makes more sense just because of that specifically. And also I know, some of the World Cup qualifying matches and stuff are being played in Vancouver and in Toronto. So if you're generating hype, following where Canadian soccer is, following the hype of where, the MLS currently is probably a better way to start. There's a proven market there. And I think that makes more sense to, try to start with something in Vancouver where you might have investors already present, as opposed to trying to start afresh in Quebec.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's kind of the thing that kind of goes back in regards to the World Cup. I know that's another topic that we were debating about getting into. Was in regards, AJ, you're out of the Instagram one now.
Yeah, it kicked me out. I just requested to come back in.
Okay. Yeah, but I don't know, because oftentimes you hear whether it's the Olympics or whether it's the FIFA World Cup, you always get like these host cities, these host countries to kind of invest in all this different infrastructure, and maybe that's what Vancouver's doing in regards to what you're saying. But I don't know what happens after 2026, right? Can BC actually have 3 professional soccer teams, or even with the the academy that you're talking about? Is that feasible? I think that's where it kind of just gets a little interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't see why not. I know the population of Vancouver and the metropolitan area is definitely large enough to host multiple soccer teams. Like obviously you have everyone wants to be in downtown Vancouver and wants to be near Rogers Arena, near BC Place, and all of the hotbeds of downtown. But the success of the team in Victoria, I think, is a sign that the greater Vancouver area could still host teams, whether you go to Langley or somewhere in Surrey, which still has a strong and growing population of interested fans in all sports, including soccer and hockey. I think for the Canadian Premier League, there's an argument to be made about having to try to spread out where your teams are instead of, trying to be like, in clusters of the country in order to be truly a Canadian league. But I guess in terms of what investments exist and, finding people to actually invest in teams and finding where I guess soccer is currently present. I'm a fan of Vancouver, but I think you're right. Like, we need to hopefully see something happen in Quebec sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I think one big thing that they're trying to attempt to do here is similar to what they did in the CFL. You got the Hamilton Tiger Cats and you got the Toronto Argos. Then you're also seeing the same thing in tons of places in England and France and Spain, everywhere. There's really local rivals, right? I think that's also something that they're trying to do. This is going to create a massive rivalry between Pacific FC and the new Vancouver team, right? And I think that's what their goal is. It's going to attract more people to those games. Because if you look at the numbers for games like Barcelona versus Real Madrid, a rivalry game, or local derbies like Man U, Man City, Liverpool, Everton in England, even like the Argos and the Ticats in the CFL, those games have more importance to them because of those rival games, just for bragging rights, as well as league position, obviously. I think having that is what's going to generate more interest for the CPL overall. That's why I think they chose to go somewhere like Vancouver, because I think at first it's just going to generate more interest, and then overall it's going to generate interest for the league, and then they can further expand elsewhere in the country to sort of build up their credibility and build up their spectators, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I know the Pacific and Vancouver Whitecaps game during the Canadian Championship was huge.
It was massive.
Oh, for sure. Like that's something I was gonna fly out there just to go watch, obviously, because Ben's one of our clients and all that, and that was one of his dreams to play for the Whitecaps one day, so playing them would be a huge thing. But no, I kind of get that thing. But I guess my only concern, and then we'll move on to the next topic here, was, I don't know, when I saw there was going to be an announcement, I thought it was going to be more of a smaller market, because you see this with the CHL, especially with the, I think you can even say Toronto in the CHL, and even in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. I know especially Montreal specifically. I think they used to have a bunch of teams fairly close to downtown, and there wasn't a demand for it, right? Because they had the Montreal Canadiens, right? And Toronto, they have Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah. So those teams were struggling. And that's one of the things where I was thinking in regards to Vancouver, where can a team really kind of shine in that spotlight, where maybe if they kind of put something like the Simon Fraser Valley, I'm not saying that BC isn't a good area to do it, but I think that would have probably had, I don't know, who knows? We're just speaking because we don't necessarily have the facts, and we won't for a few years here. But it's pretty interesting because who knows? I just would have thought it would have been something a little different because, I don't know, they already had a team there. But anyways, it's a great topic if you want to find out more. AJ is going to be writing about it in this week's issue of the Sport Marketeer, which comes out tomorrow. So check it out. It's gets sent directly to your inbox. Now, on to the next topic here. I'll take it away.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading a report written by our good friends at Zoom about the impact of women in gaming. And this report, it was about 13 pages, and it was pretty extensive. It was a great read and learning just more about, the space of the consumer industry surrounding esports. And, if you don't know it yet, you'll know it after, a couple of them are content pieces here. We love talking about esports here at White Whale Marketing. We're a big fan of it, and we know that, the future lies in esports. So while reading this report, there's a couple of stats I want to throw at you guys, and then I have a nice question, and let's just have a quick discussion about, I guess, the future of the esports marketing space, because I know it's a space that it's hard to tap into, and trying to find revenue generating opportunities in esports is obviously, it's the digital gold rush, I'd say. So we're comparing the affinities that different gaming fans have towards industries, and it shows that when it comes to music and fashion, women gaming fans have a 1.3 times more likelihood of engaging with brands that are based in music, and 2.2 times more likelihood of interacting and having a positive affinity with fashion brands in relation to esports. So it shows, there's a difference in the woman esports fan and the male gaming fan, and kind of what industries they have stronger affinities to. And I think we started to see that. We've seen fashion brands, we've seen music really collaborate with esports and with the gaming space in general. We've had musicians perform on Fortnite. We've had musicians collab with 100 Thieves Gaming and a bunch of other gaming teams. And then on the fashion side as well, skins is the name of the game for a lot of the games we play. I think, Animal Crossing has had partnerships with a bunch of other brands where they've created like special lines of costumes and cool skins for players to use. And it's all about how brands are trying to engage with the fans on the gaming space. My question is, and I think it's a great discussion piece to have. I know we talked about fashion, we talked about music and stuff, but is there an industry that could tap into like the millennial, the Gen Z market through esports, and that hasn't done so already? And maybe where's the next? Where's the next?
Yeah,
I don't know. I want to say gold. I don't want to say gold rush again, but like, what industry is next?
to be honest, I just kind of touched on esports, kind of staying on that topic for a bit. I like you're saying here, and as you're kind of saying it more, I'm like, I was saying this in the last podcast I recorded right before this one for the route. Like, just speaking kind of gives me these ideas where I have a younger cousin, first cousin. Shout out her. She's I think 10 years, 11 years younger than me, so completely different generation, right? She grew up with YouTube, phones, etc. And Haral, remember when I met you through that esports thing I did when I had my personal brand? I was very impressed when I did that, right? Where I was like, oh wow, it was like so hard because I wasn't that big of a gamer. And I was speaking to her about it because I know she plays Minecraft, and she gave me a list of games to check out because that's what's big at school. And she knows how to stream and do everything. And apparently that's what her and her friends do because they're in grade 7 now. So, or I think she's grade 8. Sorry, but when she was in like grade 6 or something, that's what they were doing. And I was like, oh, what? And she's like, yeah, gaming's huge. Whereas I don't know about you guys, but when I was in school, I didn't necessarily game too much. I had all the guys probably did a bit more than I did. And I know the girls didn't really whatsoever, maybe other than one or two. So I can see how that would be so impactful now, right? Where, yeah, fashion brands and different things like that should be getting involved. To be honest, I wouldn't even. I would like to see even like sports teams get involved a bit more. Even like, I'm going to talk about this in the next topic we're having in regards to the meta. I think there's more and more ways now for athletes and fans to be connected, right? And I think gaming is a great way to do so. Whether you want to build out a brand, you want to sell products, whether it's fashion or whatever. I think esports, like you're saying, it is a gold rush for that. But the next
Sort of.
gold rush, I don't know.
Sort of like to touch on what you said there, with like, especially with the athletes that create their own personal brand. So we know like the David Beckham brand, right? I mean, once he retired, he started creating all this fashion line, does a lot of work with Calvin Klein. In the latest FIFA game, he has his own kit that you have to complete specific objectives and squad building challenges, what they call them, on FIFA.
Yeah.
And then you get certain kit and certain things for your club in Ultimate Team with the David Beckham brand. And I think sort of collaborations with different, whether it's athletes and their personal brands, whether it's like musicians, because they did the same thing with a British grime rapper, AJ Tracy. He partnered, even a bunch of DJs as well, I'm pretty sure, have partnered with FIFA to have specific things in FIFA, but then relates and gives these sort of extrinsic rewards if you do certain things in the game that then brings out in the real world and then gives and creates more exposure to their brand, right? So I think there's a lot of potential for many different avenues, and honestly, there's not a lot of risk to it. It's low risk, high reward, because it doesn't really cost much to put something into the game. You're sort of just getting your brand out there and you're getting your name out there. And then in return, you can create a lot of brand positivity. So for the AJ Tracy thing, for example, they put his music in the game as a FIFA soundtrack. There's a jersey that he created. And then people then know that he has an album or a song coming out soon. People go and listen to that song on Spotify that's on FIFA. And then they go and listen to the rest of his songs. And it sort of just creates this loop of new followers for the brand or even just the individual itself, right?
Yeah. No, and like just kind of maybe touch on the esports before we kind of get into metaverse and trying to understand all that good stuff. But first off, AJ, you listen to grime? I didn't know that. And I guess the other thing is, like esports is crazy, right? Where I think I touched on this maybe in 2 episodes ago on the White Whale Marketing Podcast. First off, if you're watching us on Instagram, you can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We're live there now where you can see the different graphics we have set up for you, so you have a more engaging experience perhaps. But yeah, just kind of building off what I was saying, I had someone right from, I think, Formula One from the Alpine F1 team come on the route, one of the podcasts here at White Whale Marketing, and he was saying, he was very into gaming growing up, as many of us are at this age, and he was saying, he said, yeah, I just wanted to try different projects, see how it would go, and then from there, it became so successful that they partnered with an esports team, but then that did so well that Alpine, the F1 team, were like, oh shit, like, sorry, I don't know, yeah, I can say this is my smart podcast. It did so well that the F1 team were like, okay, we have to start our own esports team. because it was so interactive, and they're finding that they're getting so much new fans, and there's a different avenue to kind of connect with them. And even just having the drivers kind of, take part in different things like that. And it was something that, people can actually connect with them from home, where it's kind of hard for, fans to have that actual driving experience, right? Where it's not actually there unless you have that virtual setup. So yeah, I think gaming's crazy. And, when we have conversations like this, it almost stresses me out a bit. We're like, hey, you know what? We kind of got to get going in that avenue a bit more than we already have. But
I think that's just the big thing, the accessibility of it, right?
Sure.
It's a lot harder to sort of being a spectator. A lot of the time in person, especially right after or still during a global pandemic, right? Gaming is sort of an avenue where you can still be a fan, then access it and interact from home. And I think that's the biggest part, right? It's the accessibility and the convenience of it. And it's a very cheap and convenient driver for these brands and for these athletes and for these companies. And it's very, very effective. Like what we've seen, like with the Alpine Formula One, it's a new avenue of advertising and marketing where it's very cheap, but it's also attracting these new demographics and these new markets.
Yeah, and I guess last thing I was saying that, yeah, it is probably cheaper now, but maybe it's a little investment that you can kind of get it now while it's low. And then hopefully with time, you kind of, build a good rep where, you bought in early, right? So maybe you're kind of having good graces with the different brands that you partner with, or different streamers or esports athletes. So yeah, pretty interesting overall. We're also gonna be writing about this in this week's Sport Marketeer. As we said, if you're on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at Whale Marketing, and that's MKTG, not the full marketing, because we're cool like that. But anyways, now to the main event. Facebook is changing to their name to Meta. If people haven't known that, it's kind of a big deal, right? Because it's a huge impact, and I think it will even impact society, right? Where, um, we're already very, I don't know, in tune with what's going on with our phones, right? How often do you ever go to dinner, or hang out with friends or family, and a phone comes out? Probably 100% of the time, someone will have their phone out. They'll scroll through social media or something like that. And I tried to watch the whole keynote. I kind of fast forward through different parts. It was a little cringy at times, but yeah, I think essentially what Mark Zuckerberg was trying to say here was it's kind of a new way to kind of evolve social technology, is what he was saying, right? That's how they viewed this change, because people in the 50s are like, oh, TV's no good for you. Then people are increasing the amount of time they spend on TV, then computers, and now phones. And now he's trying to say that, the metaverse is that next iteration of it. So I'll kind of maybe briefly say what the metaverse is, because I didn't understand it right away. AJ, do you need help to get back in the live chat?
It's not letting me for some reason.
Okay, well, we'll just kind of continue on here, and when I get that little notification, I'll add you back in. But essentially what the metaverse and how Facebook mentions how they view things, they plan on operating within it, where you can virtually meet, work, and play, and you can use a VR headset, glasses, or even your device, whether that's a phone, etc., whatever technology comes out. And obviously I think it can be fair to assume that all these different devices or things that you can kind of use to interact within this verse will be a Facebook product, right? It's just another avenue for them to sell. Yeah, it's kind of a scary iteration here, and I'll even show the picture, right? Where I think we're always promised a little too much, and it's under-delivered a bit. But are we actually going to be able to, fence a hologram? Probably not, right? I think that's a little wild, and I'm just going to add AJ back. AJ, is it going?
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Yeah, so so this is kind of a little picture that they have in regards to the metaverse. He's kind of doing different things where he was kind of showcasing where when you put on one of these devices, VR headset, glasses, whatever, you kind of create a world of your own. It's almost like Sims, I would say, in some aspect, where you kind of create, your home, but then you can kind of have a rocket ship coming out of it, right? So you're almost kind of escaping reality and going to this different universe. So that's how they kind of view it. And obviously, we're a sports marketing company. We're going to go look at it from a sports marketing angle. And there's some, different key areas I wanted to chat about how I think it will impact sports. But yeah, I don't know if that was the best explanation of it, but what do you guys think so far of the change? And then we can kind of get into the different ideas that I have in regards to how we can introduce that into sports.
I think, well, just beyond the metaverse itself, the idea of like creating an immersive virtual reality experience. I'm sure we'll get into this a bit later, but there's so many ways you can
Yeah.
apply that to sports.
Mhm.
Just easily, because sports at the end of the day, it's about the live experience, it's about the live entertainment that exists within, like, the confinements of the arena, the field, the pitch, whatever you have it. And obviously virtually connecting people around the world is a great way to do that. And I think, the metaverse is well suited to do that. Where I'm worried about it is obviously, it creates a digital monopoly, essentially. That's what Facebook's obviously trying to do. They're trying to have
Yeah.
as much control as possible of the virtual reality space, like whether it's using their applications, their products, specifically controlling the advertising around it and stuff. For individual creators and even beyond individual creators, let's look at teams, let's look at athletes, like whoever's going to be interacting with the meta space, their interaction with their consumers and the way that they're able to generate revenue through advertising or through any other forms of marketing will somewhat be controlled and monitored by Facebook. Like,
Mhm.
maybe there's not even much of a creative outlet to, like, do your own marketing and stuff. Maybe the only types of advertisements will be Facebook ads. And if
Yeah.
everything's going to run through the Facebook's ads manager and the Facebook ad machine, I think you're losing out on a lot of the autonomy that platforms like Twitch or other smaller platforms that aren't necessarily centralized create. And the moment you create something centralized by trying to bring everything together, on paper it sounds great because it's easier and there's a much more it's easy to facilitate the different platforms. But I think the issue lies where the whole point of the internet and a lot of the reasons why we interact with the way we do on it is because it's decentralized and you have more control. I'm worried we might be losing it if we head over into this next step and like the evolution of the space without properly setting boundaries for how, like, I guess Facebook or any other company, I guess Meta or whoever, interacts with their consumer and what controls they have over it.
Adrian, I just got a quick point if you don't mind, because something
Yeah, go for it.
will be interesting for what you're saying. Do you think maybe this has an impact? And I'm sure this is obviously something that was years in planning, but obviously, how I think I saw a statistic yesterday. I think maybe 90% or 80% of the world now has like iPhones, or iPhone hit 1 billion users not too long ago, which is crazy to think of, considering just underdeveloped countries and stuff. So they probably don't have access to that, but where people can, that's where they do have it. And obviously with you're talking about Facebook ads and how huge that's been for like digital marketing and doing ads. But with that new update for like privacy, I think Apple said where you can kind of say apps know you're not allowed to track certain things, and the Facebook ads weren't able to be as targeted. Maybe this was kind of another iteration or another plan for this, because maybe they saw this coming and they're like, hey, you know what? We kind of have a monopoly on this metaverse or universe. I don't know how this stuff works yet. Um, Maybe that's a way for them to kind of have all these different analytics now, where they can have specifically target ads as they once did, but maybe even more so, right? Where, as you're saying, if they have a monopoly on us kind of interacting in the future socially, like obviously with technology, maybe that's what they wanted, because their whole plan is, hey, now if you want to do advertising, you have to do it through us, through nobody else, whether it's Twitch, YouTube, it doesn't matter, because everyone's interacting through this. Because you can, something they did in the keynote, you can essentially like watch videos with someone like beside you, like a hologram, right? So I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but maybe continue going.
I think although it will create a monopoly, I think there aren't necessarily full barriers for entry. I think if something like this does occur where they sort of have power in the market, I think what it may even allow people to do is find new avenues for sharing, for digitally sharing, for marketing, for advertising online, which then I think a lot of people in certain demographics don't use Facebook anymore, right? A lot of businesses do, and a lot of the demographic now is a lot older people. I think people will just be more inclined to create something new and go the next step and do something that Facebook isn't. And I think that can be very exciting in itself, to
Yeah.
sort of step away from the monopoly and step away from the social norm of going on Facebook or using Meta in the metaverse, and kind of creating its own avenue for consumers, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And obviously, I think we have like 10 minutes here, so I want to get to the sports aspect of it. But you're not wrong, right? Where sometimes, this competition or these like new innovation, it kind of leads to, different ideas or businesses arising from it. So it could be bad, could be good. What I said in the article that's going to come out tomorrow, it's a little exciting, but it's also kind of scary. I'm not going to lie. And also, as I think I said to you guys, or maybe I said on the podcast already, some stuff just seems a little useless, right? Like if I want to play chess with a buddy, he's gonna come over and we're gonna play chess. I don't need a hologram of him if he lives next door, right?
I think it's interrupted, but I agree with that. I think not necessarily the person to person. I just think the general use of technology, like with the holograms, exactly. I think it has a lot of potential in sports as well.
Yeah.
So even like you see with the hologram, if they're using like these virtual reality headsets, it kind of reminds me. I don't know if you guys seen the movie Ready Player One. Basically, it creates like this entire virtual reality world. So basically, it's like a free roaming world where you use the virtual reality headset. And you can go and you can interact with people, and I think they can actually use that very well to their advantage in the sporting world, right?
Yeah,
especially with a lot of people. I mean, stadiums were closed for a year, and yeah, there's the atmosphere when you go to these sporting events. But I think if they could, I see a possible avenue for utilizing virtual reality and actually having them in attendance at these games. Like I think it'd be pretty cool if you put on a virtual reality headset and then it places you in the stadium where you can interact the same. It's the same atmosphere, it's the same audio, it's the same visual as actually being there in person. But then you can do it while sitting on your couch at home. I think that could be pretty cool.
You're just speaking here what I have in mind, so it's kind of a perfect transition here. So quickly to kind of end this topic, and we're going to end this episode. Also, if you're listening to us on Instagram Live, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch at White Whale MKTG Marketing, obviously. So I kind of wanted to do maybe 3 examples of how people within sports kind of use this new meta that maybe I thought of or we can think of together. First off, let's kind of go at it from the athlete, the team, and the sponsor. AJ, like you're talking about, obviously some things are going to be a little unnecessary. Do I need to play chess with my buddy if he lives down the street? Probably not. But it's going to be a great way for fans to interact with athletes, right? Because, even though it does lower the barrier of entry to kind of interact with these athletes now, and you kind of sit beside them with these holograms, it's still going to allow for the athlete to have their like personal space, right, where they can still, remove themselves from the situation, even though they're probably as close as that fan will ever have to being beside them, right? So now, let's say they have an event where maybe it's a round table, and you're like, hey, if you're my top 5 fans on Instagram, come on, join this. I don't even know what it'd be called, our round table on Meta, and you can literally like virtually sit and like see each other across the table. You can have a discussion. They can ask you questions. Maybe you guys even play chess, like I was just saying. But there's different ways like that we can actually kind of connect with the athlete. The other idea I had in regards to the team, where you're kind of knocking on the right tree here, was in regards to when the stadiums are closed or with COVID, different things are rising like that. One thing, let's say when you're traveling, how many times have you ever traveled to a city? I'm kind of a sports fan, so I like seeing what these stadiums are, what they look like in person, and I wonder what that would be like, right? And one of the things that they kind of showed within the keynote is the use of AR, right? So what if they had like this, and it was in regards to this AR piece where you can kind of send it to your friends. So what if they had like these different meetup points around the stadium where you can kind of showcase these different AR areas, and it can kind of basically like a highlight reel where you kind of immerse yourself into what a game day is like at the stadium, right? And even kind of building beyond that, if someone wants to buy a ticket, they're not really sure where they'd want to sit. Maybe you can even pick up, okay, this is my price range, or this is the area I want to be in. And then that AR puts you directly into that seat, and you can see like for 60 seconds what it would be like if you attended that sporting event, right? And I think that'd be a great way to sell. And one of the other things they kind of did within the keynote is when an art piece is being shown and you send it to your friends, or if you're viewing something for an extended a period of time, it starts to expire, right? So in the keynote, they had to tip the artist to see it longer. Whereas maybe at stadiums, to see this experience a bit longer, to see what it would be like, to see if that seat's right for you, maybe you have to provide your email. Maybe you have to provide your phone number so that you can then get added to that emailing list. You can be, within their sales categories now, right? So
even with social media as well, well, you have to like link your Instagram, link your Facebook, link your Twitter or whatever, and then follow us on either account. That gives you an extended period where you can view this arrangement, right?
And that's like what we said in other podcasts, right? Where then that starts increasing the social value of the team on social media, right? Where then, now they're having more engagement or they're having more following, right? So yeah, I agree with that as well. And the last thing I had, and then you guys can touch on it, and then we'll call it quits, is in regards to the sponsor, right? Where, what people really want now and what sponsors are kind of looking for is providing more of an experience or like connecting yourselves with something like interesting, right? You don't really just want to slap a logo on the side of the boards or on the side of the field. yeah, you can do that because you'll still get, exposure, but it's not really something that's kind of a driving force for a consumer, right? So what if you start doing things like you're at a Red Bull mountain biking event, right? You're in the middle of the desert, right? You're there, there's a GoPro setup, and then you're basically, having the full experience when you put on these VR goggles and you see, hey, what is it like to actually be one of the competitors in, the mountain bike competition? You're like, hey, this is so cool. I want my friends to see this, but they're 3,000 kilometers away. Send that, as I said for that keynote with that art piece, you send it to your friends and be like, hey, we should be here next year. And then same thing where maybe like, hey, we need to GoPro because we could film ourselves, scuba diving, X, Y, Z. You can share it on social media. And same thing where they kind of where the sponsor can maybe sign them up, or hey, we'll give you a free trial with a GoPro, or that doesn't make sense, free trial with a GoPro, but you know what I mean. There's different things you can kind of do like that. But yeah, some things I had in mind. You guys can kind of touch on that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the whole like sponsor piece that you mentioned of how they interact with creating those experiences, I think it's obviously, I think it comes down to the athlete. And I know we talk a lot about athlete marketing here. And I think the athlete is the one who has the most to gain from potentially creating the metaverse. Like in my mind, the first thing that I thought of when AJ brought up like, the AJ Tracy stuff was imagine an augmented reality or using virtual reality for an athlete to launch their brand. And like, instead of creating like, we love like looking at like product launches and stuff where you go into like the Jordan store, you walk around and stuff. Let's create that virtually, because obviously it's impossible for like, like let's take an athlete like, let's take Nico, for example. If Nico launches a product line or something like that, and he's got a global audience, everyone's going to be flying down to York to watch him play, or like, come see his merch live. So creating these augmented experiences where like, it's cool, it's flashy, there's a lot of lights and stuff. It makes you feel like you're actually there, and it gives you that VIP experience while still interacting with and engaging with the athletes, product or the athlete's merchandise. And imagine then with your virtual reality thing, you just like click it and then you buy it immediately.
Yeah.
And that's where I see like the future comes, especially when it comes to like buying merchandise and buying experiences. It's almost like a literal virtual marketplace using augmented reality. And I know with Instagram now, like, you can tag something, you can click on a clothing item and buy it immediately. I think that's the next step, where using the virtual reality and the augmented reality features within the metaverse would allow for consumerism and for, marketplaces and merchandise sales to become that much easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like what you said, especially with the merchandise sales, a lot of companies are already starting to do this. So I don't know if you guys know, but if you go on the Adidas app, I used to work there, so I'm a little biased. If you choose some of the shoes that they little flex. If you actually go on some of the shoes on the Adidas app, for example, the Stan Smiths or Superstars, they actually already have augmented reality where you show your shoes or show your feet. You're just wearing socks. When you click on a certain shoe or certain color, whatever, it shows what it looks like on your feet. So just the opportunities they could have in this metaverse, just even with athletes and sponsors and different companies, they have so many different avenues which they could pursue with the new technology in this metaverse. And I think it's really interesting because there's so many different ways where they can, create different elements and use different technologies to, maximize their potential.
And the last thing I'll kind of say is kind of like piecing together what you both said, that's why I love having these discussions, because, pops some ideas in my mind. You can even do things where, like, let's say you have an athlete, right? You're trying to build this brand, kind of maybe showcase and make him a little stand out a bit more. You kind of do something where, let's say it's a soccer player, and he's kind of doing these amazing, like, tricks, right? When they're juggling the ball, and you kind of place that around a different city, and people can kind of view it, right? Or it's almost like Pokemon Go, where you're like, it pops up, like, hey, like, look at, Ben's, Techers at this place, right? And then you're almost like doing like a scavenger hunt, where the more that you see, eventually you kind of unlock a new piece of merchandise, and then you kind of, like you're saying with Adidas augmented reality, it gets placed on you, you see how it looks on you, and then maybe you provide a 50% discount if you saw, 5 different of the different sites to see, the AR pieces, right? So yeah, like possibilities are endless, and I completely agree with you guys. The athletes have so much to gain in this, and hopefully don't lose too much with, Mark Zuckerberg overtaking the world here and having,
Feels like Space Jam 2.
Yeah.
Space Jam 2.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, that's it for the podcast. For those tuning in on Instagram, this is the White Whale Marketing Podcast. We do this every Thursday. we're in collaboration with the Sport Marketeer. It's a newsletter that takes the articles that we talked about in today's episode and just provide in written form, right? And it gets shipped to your inbox every Friday. It kind of goes in a little more detail about all these different topics here, and it's something that you can actually maybe grasp a bit better because we're just chucking ideas here and having discussions. Where that one you can actually, take it, maybe highlight it, send it to your boss. You're like, hey, boss, did you know the metaverse? Did you hear about that? And you kind of maybe throw some ideas. Obviously, give us credit, or we're gonna come after you. But yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But anyways, thanks for joining, guys. This is our first Instagram live. I think we're going to try to continue doing this with this podcast. And yeah, so that's it for the White Whale Marketing Podcast. We're going to end it on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And then Instagram, I'm going to try to see how we can end it because I don't know how that works. But yeah, thanks.